Doctrines of men. They're everywhere. Doctrines of men are everywhere. Matter of fact, what I say can be considered as you know, could be considered a doctrine of man. But doctrines of men are taught, they're learned, they're what they're revamped. You know what a revamp means? That means they revised. All kind of doctrines have been revised. Mm. That's why you get what you get. Everybody's revising. I have in my hand here uh, the book, as you can see. My name is on it. It's got the Holy Bible is not the final authority. Also on it, you know, right there. And it says Holy Bible. It's a New American Standard Bible. It says reference edition. That's what I have. And there's some words, a lot of words in this Bible. As you can see, there are maps also in this Bible. It's got maps. Uh, there's a map right there, and there's no doubt that this Bible, I have opened it a few times. I've got some others that I've opened more, and that's because I like, instead of the what you see on that page, I like bigger print. But there is, and there has been, and there will be doctrines. Doctrines. I've looked up the word doctrine, and it pretty much settles down on something learned. Mm. After reading. Because the doctrines, the whole thing started years ago after a man, according to this book right here, the man, his name was Moses. Moses, according to this book, was about 80 years old, and he saw something probably that's never been seen before. You say, well, you are aware of what Moses saw, surely, because Moses saw a bush on fire not being burned up. That's what got his attention. Moses was about 80 years old. He's got a wife. They've had children. And he's 80 years old, thereabouts, when according to reference Bible, Moses encountered a bush on fire. The account of it, you know where it is. I'm sure. It's after Genesis. If you know anything about this book, it's after Genesis. And in Genesis, there's only so many chapters. And then you get to Exodus. There are, 50 chapters in Genesis. Okay? Moving right along, slower than some people want to go. Joseph stayed in Egypt, and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. That's how long Joseph lived. And some years passed after Joseph died, and the next thing you find at the end of Genesis, I'll read for you. So Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. His father was embalmed also. Joseph's father was Jacob. God changed his name to Israel. And you can find that information in the prior chapters. But in what's next, it's on page 75 is where it begins here. 75 is on the beginning of this page. It says, these were the names of the sons of Israel who came out of Egypt with Jacob. They came each one with his household. And in chapter 2, now a man was born from the house of Levi and married a daughter of Levi, and the woman conceived, and she had a son, and it says he was beautiful, and she hid him for 3 months. She liked his looks. The mother liked her baby. And a daughter of Pharaoh was bathing in the Nile, in the water of the Nile River. And she had her maids with her, and they found this basket with a baby in it. And she was interested and got the basket, got the baby, and things progressed. After that, Moses was named by Pharaoh's daughter. That's who named Moses. And Moses holds this name. He's called Moses from now until he dies. And according to what you'll read, if you read carefully, God buried Moses. Nobody ever found his body. But Moses was pasturing the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God, according to what I see. And if you follow along in chapter 3, you will see something similar to that. That's what you will see. And there he saw and heard. He saw the fire. He saw the burning bush. And he heard words. and he heard God speak to him. That's who spoke to Moses. You can find this in chapter 3. In chapter 4, you will find Moses and a what if. A what if. That's what you'll find. What if? What if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? For they may say, the Lord has not appeared to you. And they still say that. But God appeared to Moses. And Moses was afraid to look at God. Why? It's irrelevant. You don't need to know why. It just says God appeared and Moses was afraid to look at God. But Moses was told and given some instructions by God. And Moses and Aaron said to Pharaoh in chapter 5, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel. Now, you know that Moses is not the God of Israel. So don't try to act like he is. There have been a lot of speculations and many words spoken concerning Moses. But Moses and his Aaron did go to Pharaoh, and the words here are, let my people go that they may celebrate a feast to me in the wilderness. Now this will take place. It will take place at a certain mountain. And Moses will take these people out of Egypt, and they will go to the mountain where God will come down in front of, on the mountain where Moses and all the people of Israel are, because Moses brings them all out of Egypt into the wilderness, and they get to the mountain, and God comes to the mountain. He does. You'll find that in chapter, I don't know what chapter, but in chapter 10, it hasn't happened. And there's Exodus. They call it an Exodus. That's when the people follow Moses, and they come out, and Moses brings them out. In chapter 14, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp before Pharaoh. And that's chapter 14. That's on page 93. In chapter 17, there's, then all the congregation of the sons of Israel journeyed by stages from the wilderness of Sin, according to the command of the Lord, and camped at this place, and there was no water for the people to drink when they got there. But the people do get a drink of water there. They do. And then in chapter 17, the words on verse 14 read this way. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this in a book as a memorial and recite it to Joshua, and I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. That's chapter 17, verse 14. And Moses built an altar and named it, "The Lord is my banner." And he said, the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war against Amalek from generation to generation. Then you get chapter 18. Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel and his people. It's chapter 18. Have you ever heard such? I've never done this before. But in chapter 19, it's on page 100 in this Bible, right here. In the third month, after the sons of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that very day they came unto the wilderness of Sinai, Sinai, when they set out from Rephidim. They came to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness, and there Israel camped in front of the mountain. Moses went up to God there, and God gave him instructions. Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel. That's in verse 3. You can check it out, of the 19th chapter. Then in chapter 20, then God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. In other words, God's saying, I brought you out, now I'm it, so to speak. Can you comprehend this? I hope you can comprehend this. In chapter 21, it says, now these are the ordinances which you are to set before them. And these things had to be written down, and they were written down, and they were kept by them, those who were there. And all these things were carried in a box. They carried a box because God instructed them to build something. It was a box, and in the box, it had the writings, and something else was in that box. So you can find out about the box if you will read the Bible. Now, if a man steals an ox or a sheep or slaughters it or sells it, he shall pay 5 oxen for that ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. That's in chapter 22. Now I'll finish the rest of this live stream this way, looking at the screen as I speak. I have said doctrines of men. The things that were written by Moses and the things that were written by God were with those people I just read about. Because God Himself wrote the first writings on stone. You can read it. God wrote it. Moses came back down off of the mountain where he broke the tablets, and God gave him instructions, and he came back up on the mountain. Now, I don't know who wrote on the second stones, but I do know they got written on, and those were carried by the people from there on in the box that Moses was instructed to build. Now, that's what happened. Now, dealing with these false doctrines that we have today, I heard someone yesterday say, I have to do something. And he got all this information from somebody that said something and wrote something. Oh, that's what you have right here. You have something that somebody said, and you have what somebody has written. That's right here. Jesus said one thing that was very important. Very important. Now, everything Jesus said, you can say it was important, especially after Jesus is 30 years old. Because something happens to Jesus when he's 30 years old that changes everything. And my brother is calling me. So I will end this video. I will.